Like, it's taken her 30 years, all right? 30 fucking years. Just for her to realize that if she isn't being understood, if the guy can't understand what it is that she's going through, that she needs to communicate. That when she's pissed, when she's going through something, she needs to communicate. Do you know how wild of a thing that is? Like, if it's taken her 30 years to figure something like that out, imagine when she's going to figure out that apparently most men don't even know where the G-spot is.
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who likes his women the same exact way he likes his yogurt. He's also a man who may consider jumping to conclusions as a cardio routine. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B, and I am here for the purposes of education. Okay, actually it's mostly educating women, but you know what? For the sake of this episode, and because I don't want to make it sound as though women don't know anything and I'm constantly educating them, I won't say that it's about women, okay? I won't say that it's about women. So I am saying that it's about education. And I do intend on educating you guys on some of the things that y'all may not know about men, as well as some of the stuff that I feel like society just needs to start acknowledging, because the more we learn about people and what it is they're doing today, the more you realize that sometimes the stuff from back in the day just made sense, you know? Like doing shit naturally, you know, like building community, you know, like acknowledging people are actually people. But, you know, that one is something that you'll probably be doing towards the end of the episode, of which I do hope you listen all the way till the end. And should you like the episode, should you not like it, should you have a different form of feedback, or should you want to suggest a potential topic for me to discuss on a future episode, then the social media links are usually in the description below, and, you know, my DMs are always open. And I would be more than happy to receive your feedback and handle it accordingly. Of which, if you do end up on any of those pages, you know, a nice follow would be particularly appreciated, because, you know, like the more people that follow, the more credibility, the easier it is to get guests, you know, stuff like that. And, you know, I'm sure we'd all love to get, like, you know, guests and shit, you know, so that we can hear different perspectives and everything. But all in all, thank you so much for listening. And like I said earlier, I hope you listen all the way till the end. Now, with all of that said and done, I do kind of need to start this education off. But I want to start off from a more general point of view and look at something that doesn't necessarily affect women alone, but, you know, it can also affect couples, and that is the idea of having children. Now, of course, you know, it's a bit of a touchy subject, and, you know, for those of us that pull out, it's not like we can really say all that much about having kids and taking care of them. But what I can talk about isn't necessarily that, but when you look at the idea of sperm donation, then people like me can come in. Not that I'm a donor, but, you know, it is something particularly interesting. Now, apparently, there seems to be an issue with the rising cost of sperm banks in the US, and apparently some women are seeking an alternative, which is, and I kid you the shit not, this is actually something that sounds wild, DIY sperm donors. Like, that shit sounds absolutely fucking wild that they have a DIY for this shit. But anyways, this was a story that was covered by Vice a couple of months back, sometime around July. And it's, you know, this whole thing where apparently women now are looking at sperm banks as super expensive, and now they want to go for a much cheaper option. And apparently, using social media, these women post what they're looking for, and there are certain men, of which they covered a guy called Kyle, are supposedly coming to meet the demand. Now, this was back in 2021 when Vice followed Kyle and met with several of his clients to find out what this lifestyle is really like, okay? And I watched a clip of it on IG, and what I can tell you is this shit is wild, because this is the same Kyle that I think has appeared on a show in TLC called 90 Day Fiance. And this man, in as much as he's been seeming awkward, has been bagging women, all right? Dude has been there, you know, on TV just bagging women left and right. And I'm not gonna lie, while the wildest part is the DIY sperm donor route, like him bagging all of those women and possibly sleeping with them is even wilder, especially considering how awkward the guy supposedly claims to be. Or maybe that's his shtick and that's how he manages to pull babes. But anyways, all that aside, I think the bigger question is the whole issue of the sperm donors. Like, okay, I can get sperm banks might be expensive in some places in the world, but the idea of a sperm donor, especially calling it a DIY sperm donor, is absolutely wild, because normally back in the day, people would just say, we had a one night stand and I got pregnant. Like, usually that's what people used to say back in the day. Or, I just saw a dude that I liked and I went and I made sure that he come inside and, I decided to have the kid. Or I wanted a kid and I got a guy and I did it with him and I made sure I got pregnant. Like, people usually say stuff like that. But DIY sperm donors, like, that shit is wild. And I say that it's wild because if you're calling it DIY and you're calling it sperm donor, like, there's an element of maybe this guy might be charging for it. And if that's the case, we have started reaching, actually, we've been touching on dystopian levels of reality for a while now. But this just feels like it's next level, because normally, if you wanted to have a kid with a guy, usually the simplest way to do it is just go and date a dude or just go shag a dude and stay with them for a bit. And then just like that, you're gonna get yourself a kid, provided that, you're healthy enough and you're fertile enough as a woman, and, the guy is fertile enough and the sperms don't have a ton of stress. So for the most part, like, provided you could bag a dude and you all shag, there's a pretty good chance that you could just end up being a parent just like that. But now, women are opting to skip through dating, possibly having a relationship, a marriage, and starting a family, and just going all the way to starting a family with little to no consideration of having a guy with you, simply because you can get a sperm donor named Kyle. Okay, just a sperm donor, not necessarily named Kyle, but yes, a sperm donor. Like, I feel like that in and of itself is absolutely wild. Although, considering a lot of the things that I hear out here, it doesn't seem too wildly far off, but at the same time, it still seems particularly wild, because, like, I hear more and more women talking about getting, good genetics from people. Like, there's times when I'll go and I'll hit on women, and, like, some of the things that I'll be told are very, very interesting. Like, I've had instances where a babe has said, like, I wouldn't mind having a kid with you because at least I know that our kids would be good looking. And I don't know if she was hedging on the fact that she believes she's good looking and she believes I'm good looking, so we'll have good looking kids, or the fact that she believes that I'm good looking. But all in all, like, that shit is something that I've heard before, and more often than not, people will usually want to, like, either trap or they will agree to have a kid together. But having a DIY sperm donor is absolutely mad. The only thing is, I know that couples will do this, or at least women who are married will do this, and it's not like the husband isn't capable of producing children or, like, producing, fertile sperm or anything. It's not like he is unable or unwilling. It's just the babe that decides, you know what, we've already produced one kid and I didn't really like how they turned out. Let me see if I can get some better genes from elsewhere. And they shag another dude and they get pregnant. Like, this was something that I was being told by a friend not too long ago. Like, women will literally sit and they'll be talking about this shit and they're like, when you have the first kid is the husband's. That one you usually will have the first kid just to test and see how it turns out. But if you want better results, or if you want a different result because, maybe you don't like how he looks in, like, certain aspects and you want a better looking guy, then you go and you do it with a better looking guy so that you can have better looking kids or something of the sort like that. And I kid you not, I heard that shit and I was dumbfounded. Alright. Mind you, I was also being told that a majority of the women that actually go to Marie Stopes to get an abortion done are usually married women. And the more you hear stuff like that, the more you're like, what the fuck is going on out here? And, like, to be honest, I can understand wanting a sperm donor isn't a bad thing. Alright. And honestly speaking, I feel like there's multiple dudes that would not mind being a sperm donor, provided that they can lay pipe. That's literally what most guys are interested in. A lot of guys are very interested in laying pipe. They don't really care too much about the kid. So if you can absolve them of the responsibility of taking care of the kid, so that's side one. And on top of that, the guy knows that he's gonna get a bunch of free pussy for a bit of time. Like, a ton of guys would probably say yes to it. Like, a lot of guys would probably not think too deeply into it. But even though that's the case, even though there's all of these guys that are perfectly down for it, even then, like, isn't it a little bit wild though? Like, I can get, yes, maybe wanting superior genetics of, some person's idea of what that's supposed to be, or just wanting to have a kid aside. Like, what happened to the idea of trying to raise a kid in a two-parent household? What happened to the moral fabric of, wanting to have your own kids with someone that you really want to have a future with? Like, is it that hard to reach that people have to resort to this? Because I'd argue that there's a lot of good men out here. Yes, it might not be the exact kind of man that you want, but I feel like there's a lot of good men out here. And a lot of them are perfectly ready and capable of starting a family with. So I don't get why there's a lot of women, or at least why some women are choosing to go down the DIY option. Although, with that said, at least to kind of close things off, I really would want to know how it is that they reach out via social media so that I can, go and utilize such options, because I'm not saying that I have superior genetics. I'm just saying that, practice makes perfect. And maybe I might just go for a vasectomy because, if I go and I volunteer myself, all I have to do is just try and make sure that I get her pregnant. And with a vasectomy, I'm going to be trying quite a bit. But all in all, with all of that said, I'm going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like just about every adult that's been on this planet for, as long as it takes to be an adult at the very least, has probably heard of the statement, women are from Venus, men are from Mars. And it's a statement that's very interesting and encapsulates the fact that men and women won't always understand each other, but men and women will usually probably understand each other a hell of a lot better. And it shows how worlds apart people's views are, especially based on gender. And it's something that very clearly shows that, to kind of bridge that gap, not unless if you guys actually talk things out, you won't really know what the other side is on about because you don't understand them and where they're from. And it's something that I've held on to, and it's something that I've known for quite a while, which is kind of why I also do this podcast, because sometimes educating women on stuff that men go through and men feel and men experience is actually very beneficial because it kind of bridges that gap. And while that's great, I always find it interesting whenever I see, some of the outlooks and insights from the other side when, they're also trying to bridge that gap as well. It's just that I stumbled across a video not too long ago that kind of tried to, bridge that gap, quote unquote, and explain the man's side for a bunch of women because there was a woman doing it. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like some women just don't get it. Like, we're trying to communicate, but y'all are just not getting it. Or maybe it's just an assumption. I'm actually very willing to conclude that it is an assumption. But considering what it is that she said and how, she made it seem as though men are these very basic monoliths, I'm just going to let the clip play because I have some thoughts that should illuminate the male experience for a lot of women. Not necessarily the male experience, but how men are internally, just so that some of y'all can understand that guys aren't as far off emotionally as you really think they are, and there's way more that goes on inside of us than most of y'all would ever really think. And I'd love to explain exactly why, but before I can do any of that, I'm gonna let the clip play then, give my thoughts on the entire thing. So without further ado,
took me almost 30 years to learn that men don't know when they do something wrong, and I swear they don't know. Different than us, their brain is very basic. They don't create scenarios, they don't imagine things, they don't overthink, they barely think. So if I can give you an advice, stop wasting your time and stop spending your energy and say it, speak up. Tell him why he is messing up. And if you don't tell him, he won't know.
Okay. Let me be very honest and say that minus the last statement she made, I would probably argue, actually it's not even arguing, I'm a man, I can basically just conclude this shit for the most part, that she's just chatting a bunch of shit. Like, men don't know when they're wrong. Men think in a very basic manner. We don't, look at scenarios and shit. This one's a lost one. This one is very lost. But you know what? I'm glad that I'm not the only one that thinks this way. Alright, because as I was busy looking into all of this, I managed to at least get an opportunity to look at the comments, and the comments were particularly interesting because I wasn't the only one that felt like this woman is very, very misled. So let me read a couple of those comments because, oh my goodness, even though she was saying that it's no hate to men and that men are less emotional and more practical, which some people believe, Let me just read some of the comments that some of the men here put down. Now, one said, and I quote, "We overthink, we imagine, we create scenarios, we analyze, we invent, but we do it for useful things, not for gaslighting and emotionally manipulating our spouses." End quote. Which is actually very true. It is something that men actually do. We do overthink, imagine, create, and overanalyze a lot. All right. Then the other one, which jazzed me quite a bit, was a guy who said, and I quote, "Men don't know and still apologize. Women know and never apologize." End quote. Which clearly shows that, if you all know so much, or if you all, clearly know quite a bit, why is it that you guys will recognize that you're wrong, but you'll still never apologize? Absolutely wild. Absolutely fucking wild. But the one that really got me was the one where a guy said, and I quote, "The fact that it took you almost 30 years to figure out that you need to use words to communicate with another person and that no one can read your mind says a lot. But congrats on finally figuring out something that you should have already mastered at age 2. Ooh. Wait, sorry, end quote. Ooh. Oh, that was interesting. I like it. I actually kind of liked it. Just mostly because dude was basically taking the words out of my mouth, because how is it that you've been alive for 30 plus years? I'm assuming she's been alive for 30 plus years and is getting to the point where she's concluding this now. Like, how? And let me just repeat it so that you can actually understand the context. Like, it's taken her 30 years, all right? 30 fucking years. Just for her to realize that if she isn't being understood, if the guy can't understand what it is that she's going through, that she needs to communicate. That when she's pissed, when she's going through something, she needs to communicate. Do you know how wild of a thing that is? Like, if it's taken her 30 years to figure something like that out, imagine when she's going to figure out that apparently most men don't even know where the G-spot is. Like, do you know how wild that is? Like, that shit is absolutely wild. And I know the best part is the part that she's understood, and yes, it's not like you know everything about the other gender, and yes, I agree with all of that. And, I can get her not understanding something about the other gender, and it makes sense. I've also admitted to, understanding and realizing some things that are fairly basic for women, but I never really knew. And I've spoken about them openly on this podcast many, many times. Like, I've spoken about how for many years, actually up until I was barely an adult, I didn't really know that women got horny. Like, it's something that seems fairly basic, and oh my goodness, how would you not know? Like, I didn't have a sister growing up, and it's not like I'll go and I'll start having such discussions with my mom just because, parents and shit. But all in all, like, I didn't know that, and I very openly acknowledged it. But at the same time, it's not like I dumped shit down to the level where she was trying to make it seem as though men don't even think. Like, even when she said that, I found it to be very, very wild, because this is just regular human interaction. Like, being horny, that's bedroom shit. And depending on when you get to like bedroom matters as you're growing up and you try to understand it, like, you might learn it earlier or later. But you're telling me that just simple communication with the opposite sex has been that hard for you for 30 plus years? Like, that was the thing that I found to be particularly odd. And also, she still got it wrong, because she made it seem as though men are these basic individuals that do not have this ability to overthink and overanalyze and think that far and create scenarios and shit. And yet we absolutely do. Like, yes, most of the guys that you interact with might seem very simple-minded and very basic, but most guys are way, way more complicated than you would think. Men actually have a lot of layers within them, and most men are way more layered than most women think. And I think the more women interact with men who actually do speak on men-related issues, not in the very basic shallow way where they're just thinking about shagging and like, getting a partner and shit, but really looking at some of the issues that men deal with, you will realize that men are way more layered than you would ever really think. And for the most part, we will choose to go down the simple route just for reasons that make our lives easier. Like, it's always easier to just take the simpler route as a man. But it's not like stuff doesn't get complicated for us. It's not like we don't have moments where we will overthink, overanalyze, or we'll make scenarios, or we're busy trying to handle some shit. And, it's It's something that is really, really working our heads in. It's not like we don't go through such things, because we actually do. We go through it, and some of us go through it a lot. Like, it's almost a day-to-day for a lot of us guys. The only difference is we like to keep things simple and stick to the simpler things because it makes life easier for us. We don't need to debate on whether we should have a 5 or a 10-step skincare routine, because at the end of the day, we know we just need our skin to look good. So we'll just throw some water, we'll wash it like everything else. Hell, maybe apply some lotion, maybe some cream or moisturizer, and that's really it. And we'll still wipe it with the same towel that we'll use to wipe our toes and our booty hole. But at the end of the day, it's not that we don't think about things in a complex manner. It's just that we like making our lives simpler because it's just easier to live that way. And that even translates to our relationships. Whenever we're interacting with women, we will also prefer to make things simpler for us, as opposed to complicating an issue and creating more problems than we'd probably like to deal with. And this happens quite a bit as a guy, because it might seem like we're overly simple and, we don't think through things all that much, especially when it comes to relationships. But you would be extremely surprised to actually figure out just how deeply we think about our relationships. The only reason we act the way we act is, mainly for the sake of just keeping the peace. Like, that is probably the easiest way that I can describe it. But essentially, the main reasons why we will act that way is mainly because, one, we want you, the girlfriend or the wife or the partner, to stay happy for our sake. Because if you're unhappy, it's going to bring issues for us, and we just wouldn't want to deal with an unhappy partner, because it causes issues for us, because now we have to look for ways to make you happy. And if we're busy trying to complicate everything in our lives, then now it's going to become another complication that we just don't want to start dealing with, because we already deal with enough shit out here. And then the second reason, but I feel like this is probably like the main one for most guys, single or in a relationship, is that we just don't like being stressed. We don't want to stress about things to the nth detail simply because we're trying to get something specific out. For us guys, if it works, it works. We look for something that works well for us, and we take it and we move with it. But for us to go through every single thing in our lives, looking for every single bit of detail and trying to analyze that shit, like, I feel like for us, it would just get to a point where we would just have a bunch of decision fatigue, and we'd feel absolutely overwhelmed with that shit. We already deal with enough out here as is. Me going to start overanalyzing and, complicating things in the relationship, or even, around or outside of the relationship, will just complicate my life, which just doesn't make things any easier for me. Then the third reason is we'd much rather keep the peace than chase our own happiness and joy. And this mainly stems from the fact that most men just want peace. Especially in relationships, most men just want peace. Whereby you can be arguing with your girlfriend, you know that she's making a dumb point, you know that she's wrong, you've probably acknowledged it, but you look at it and the way the argument is going, and just for the sake of peace, you're like, you know what, I'll take the L. Like, guys do that all the time. Even for me right now, much as I may be single, like, I can probably tell you for a fact, if I'm arguing with a babe, I will get to a point where I will literally choose peace over getting the argument across, because I would much rather end the argument early than get it to a point where people start getting emotional, and by people I mean the woman, and then now it moves from making a logical argument to personal attacks. And at that point, it now starts to mess things up. Eventually, you guys aren't speaking to each other. It makes sleeping at night a little bit tougher, or, trying to get some from your babe. You might be horny that day or not, but, just keeping the peace is just better than winning the argument. So would I chase the happiness of winning an argument that'll last for maybe like an hour at most? Or would I much rather just take the L, I keep the peace, and I continue to be with the babe in harmony? Like, I'd always choose the second option. Every single fucking time. Alright? And the interesting part about that is that actually does demonstrate us thinking on a different level, because as the argument is going on, we're still arguing our shit out, but we're busy asking ourselves if it's really worth it. Of which, if anything, that actually shows that we actually do consider shit on a much finer level than most women would like to give us credit for. And the part about overthinking, like, I feel like women will talk about how they overthink a lot, but they forget that guys will overthink. It's just that how I believe we overthink is very different from gender to gender. Because if I'm not wrong, and I am very welcome to being criticized and being corrected on this, most women overthink other people's actions and how they affect them, and how all of that kind of ties in. But men, on the other hand, will overthink their own actions and how their actions affect other people. And you see that a lot with guys. Guys will usually overthink how they reacted to something, how they behaved, like for example towards someone, like even 2-3 years back. And it's kind of why there's this running joke online where it's like, when you realize 5 years later that the babe who was asking you to do assignments with her at her place really wanted to get some, and it's like it just hits you and you're like, oh shit, I fumbled that one. Like, that's proof that guys will think about shit well beyond just the simplistic way that a lot of women do tend to think we think. And to say that we are simple is true. As men, we like to think in a simple manner. We like to put things as simply as possible so that we don't have to stress about it. But to make it look as though we're basic people that can't really think all that well, and we cannot process shit on an emotional or a mental level that women can, is absolutely wrong. It's like assuming that just because you have an iPhone and it's simple to use, that it's absolutely basic and stupid, yet you forget that the computing power that iPhones have right now, even over the past 5-10 years, is way more powerful than the computers that were used to launch the rockets in NASA during the first moon landing. So you realize that a lot of times people like to confuse simple with basic, yet simple doesn't mean that there isn't layers within it. There's way more that you think that usually goes on underneath. And it kind of brings me to my conclusion to this entire thing, which is, just because men don't get women doesn't mean that we're lacking. Just because women, think that men are these very simple creatures doesn't mean that we're actually dumb, or we can't think, or we get things in the most basic manner possible. We're very layered. And most times, if anything, y'all really don't get us. And it's not that the problem is us, the problem is communication. So if we communicated better, stuff would probably be a hell of a lot better both sides. Although, then again, maybe there's a deeper understanding to this that I didn't get, Maybe I'm dumb as a man, maybe I am basic, maybe I'm wrong. But either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the Breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the Breaktime Podcast. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.